Okay, friends. Now we move on to the next idea of Gandhian principles. What are these principles? See, like socialistic principles are, as we know, they are more based on socialistic ideas of equality, wherein there should be lesser concentration of wealth should be equally distributed among all sections of the society. Those are socialistic principles, no doubt. Now we move on to what are Gandhian principles. See, Gandhiji has been a very important pillar in our freedom struggle, and his values and his teachings matter a lot for our country. And it is something that's reflected in the Gandhian principles or the Directive principles of state policy. The first, and that's what is the Gandhian ideology of Dpsp. These principles are based on Gandhian ideology. They represent the program of reconstruction that was enunciated by Gandhiji during the national movement. In order to fulfill the dreams of Gandhiji, some of his ideas were included as Dpsp, and they required the state first to organize village panchayats and endow them with necessary powers and authority to enable them to function as units of self-government. Friends, please remember, as I told you, the panchayat raj or the local self-government that we have today, they are more based on Gandhian principles. Like the 73rd and 74th Amendment Act, where do they find their basis? They find their basis in this Gandhian Act. Okay, to organize village panchayats, to endow them with necessary powers and authority to enable them to function as units of self-government, to promote cottage industries and on an individual for cooperation basis in rural areas. Yes, friends, as we talked about, cottage industries was something that was again emphasized by Gandhiji. Gandhiji was very much opposed to the idea of mechanization or industrialization. As we all know, Gandhiji is symbolized with the charkha in his hand. What does the charkha symbolize? The cottage industries, that every village should be self-sufficient, and especially this textile sector should come back. We should go back to the idea of handlooms. We should move away from what we have today as machine industry or the machine loom. We should move away. We should go back to the charkha. We should start spinning our own loom. That's what was the idea behind cottage. Not only with regard, even a lot of food processing industries. The basic idea of cooperatives and the cottage industries as that we have today is based on Gandhian ideology. Next, to promote voluntary formation, autonomous functioning, and democratic control of professional management of cooperative societies. As I told you, friends, cooperative societies, Article 43B. Why Article 43B? Article 43 talks about proper running of industries. Article 43 about rights of workers. What are cooperative societies? 43B. They're further giving them further rights to the workers, to the labor union. That's what is Article 43B. Article 43B, 43 was the original constitution as we had talked about. 43A was the first amendment, 43B was the second amendment. So, like as I told you, with every amendment, that article gets added an A. For example, when we wanted to bring in Panchayat Raj, or the local or the urban local bodies, we had that 73rd Amendment Act and the 74th Amendment Act. Those acts are brought in various parts of the constitution. Like I talked about fundamental duties. What is that part? Dpsp is part 4. Fundamental right is part 3. Dpsp is fundamental duty is part 4A, because that was brought in during the emergency period during the period of Mrs. Indira Gandhi as the Prime Minister. Now moving on, to promote educational and economic interests of SCs, STs and other weaker sections of the society, and to protect them from social injustice and exploitation. That's Article 46. Why? See, one very simple idea. Why is it a Gandhian principle? Because Gandhiji always fought for the rights of the downtrodden, as he coined the term Harijan for to represent the people of the lower caste or the downtrodden society. Moving on, to prohibit the consumption of intoxicating drinks and drugs which are injurious to health. That is part of Article 47. Similarly, Gandhiji was very much against cow slaughter and the slaughter of milch and draught cattle to improve their breeds. That's under Article 48. Moving on, liberal and intellectual principles. Yes, this is the third category of principles. Friends, I know that it's pretty difficult to remember the numbers of each of them. See, it's very simple to remember. Gandhian principles, they are very limited. They only see 40, 43, 43b, 46, 47 and 48. And also we saw socialistic principles are also pretty much limited. 39, 41, 42, 43, 43a and 47. Rest all come under liberal and intellectual principles, because liberal and intellectual principles are slightly more in number. Okay, the principles included in this category represent the ideology of liberalism. They direct the state to secure for all citizens a uniform civil code throughout the country. That is Article 44. See, you can very easily remember this 4. See, 4 and 4 resemble so uniform. No? Therefore, that's what is uniform civil code. Now the government is talking about bringing in uniform civil code. What is the basis for that? The basis is nothing but this Dpsp only. This liberal principles of the Dpsp is what is Article 44, to provide early childhood care and education for all children until they complete the age of 6 years. That is Article 45. To organize agriculture and animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines. Article 48. See, when agriculture has been talked about, when the next amendment comes, what will it talk about? Protecting our forest and environment. That's Article 48A. To protect and improve the environment and safeguard the forest and wildlife. That's Article 48A. To protect the monuments, places and objects of artistic or historic interest which are declared to be of national importance. Article 49. To separate judiciary and executive from this service, that is public service. Right, today a collector is called also as a district magistrate. Have you ever imagined why has he been designated as the DM or the SDM? Because in those days he also used to have the duty of the magistrate. The judiciary was also in his hands. See what happened. He is the executive as well as he was the judiciary. Therefore, he had a lot of powers, and there's a huge scope of misuse of this overwhelming power or the overarching power that a civil servant had. Therefore, Article 50 separated the power of judiciary as well as that of public service. To promote international peace and security and to maintain just and honorable relations between nations, to foster respect for international law and treaty obligations, and to encourage settlement of international disputes by arbitration. See, friends, for example, right now we had the land border agreement with Bangladesh. That was based on this article, on Article 51. Then, as I told you, certain directive principles are new. That is, they came with an amendment, that is during the year 1769, to secure opportunities for healthy development of children. Article 39. To promote equal justice and to provide free legal aid to the poor. Article 39A. See, it's under this Article 39A that NALSA, that is National Legal Services Authority, and SALSA, that is State Legal Services Authority, was set up. It was under this article only, to take steps to secure the participation of workers in the management of industries. That is Article 43A. To protect and improve the environment and safeguard forests and wildlife. Article 48A. The 44th Amendment Act of 1978 added one more directive principle, which requires the state to minimize inequalities in income, status, facilities and opportunities. That is Article 38. Again, the 86th Amendment Act of 2002 changed the subject matter of Article 45, which made elementary education as a fundamental right under Article 21A. Friends, as I told you that earlier it was of Dpsp. Then in the year 2002, with the 86th Amendment Act, it has been made a fundamental right. And in place of that, what? The early childhood care, that became a Dpsp. The amended directive requires the state to provide early childhood care and education for all children until they complete the age of 6 years, as I told you. Next, the 97th Amendment Act of 2011 added a directive principle relating to cooperative societies. It requires the state to promote voluntary formation, autonomous functioning, democratic control and professional management of cooperative societies under Article 43B. Next, what is the sanction behind directive principles? Sir B.N. Rao, the Constitutional Advisor to the Constituent Assembly, recommended that the rights of an individual should be divided into two categories, that is justiciable and non-justiciable, which was accepted by the drafting committee. Consequently, the fundamental rights are what is the justiciable in nature and incorporated in Part 3, and Dpsp are the non-justiciable ones, which are incorporated in Part 4. Therefore, friends, please remember, Dpsp according to the Constitution is non-justiciable. Yes, if the Supreme Court wants or any other High Court wants, it can take into consideration those Dpsps while while checking into the legality of any law, but in general DPSPs are not justiciable. Though the directive principles are not justiciable, the Constitution under Article 37 makes it clear that the principles are fundamental in the governance of the country, and it shall be the duty of the state to apply these principles in making laws. Thus, they impose a moral obligation on the state authorities for their application. See friends, one of the greatest applications of this DPSP is when the political parties prepare the election manifesto. Okay, they look into these principles, and this is what they promise when they say that when they come to power they will ensure these things. It is what they take the ideas from these DPSPs. Thus, they impose a moral obligation on state authorities for the application. But the real force behind them is political, and that is public opinion. As observed by Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, no ministry is responsible to the people can afford to light-heartedly ignore the provisions of Part 4 of the Constitution, as I told you. Similarly, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said in the Constituent Assembly that the government which rests on popular vote can hardly ignore the directive principles while shaping its policy. If any government ignores them, it will certainly have to answer for that before the electorate at the election time, as I told you friends. See, with regard to the amendment, the Constitution Amendment Bill or the Citizenship Amendment Bill, these things will have to be explained during the period of election. Moving on. The framers of the Constitution made DPSP non-justiciable and legally non-enforceable. Why? Because the country did not possess sufficient financial resources to implement them. As I told you friends, the DPSPs are pretty much intense in nature and they require significant financial resources. The presence of vast diversity and backwardness in the country would stand in the way for their implementation. As I told you, yes, it's for example, one of the greatest examples, Uniform Civil Code. It's not that easy to bring in Uniform Civil Code. As we all saw recently, when there were movements to entry of women into temples, there was so much of opposition. Similarly, when there was movement against introducing triple talaq, again a lot of opposition in the country. These are examples. These are some of the examples. Next, the newly born independent Indian state with many preoccupations might be crushed under the burden unless it was free to decide the order, the time and place and the mode to fulfill them. The constitution makers, therefore, taking a pragmatic view, refrained from giving the teeth to these principles. They believed more in the awakened public opinion rather than in court procedures as the ultimate sanction for the fulfillment of these principles. Yes, friends. Okay. This statement is pretty much self-explanatory. Next is criticism of DPSP. What are the criticisms of DPSP? See, the basic criticism, with regard to your exam in the governance paper 3, there is a very high possibility of question being asked from this topic. Very, very high possibility, because the examiner looks into these analytical areas while setting the question paper. What is the basic criticism? This is legal force. It's as simple as that. If the government does not impose, what can be done by the common public? There is no legal force. The directive principles of state policy has been criticized by some members of the constitution as well as other constitutional and political experts on the following grounds. First, no legal force. The directive have been criticized mainly because they are non-justiciable in character, while K.T. Shah dubbed them as pious superfluities and compared them with a check on a blank payable only when resources of the bank permit. Nazaruddin contended that these principles are no better than a New Year's resolution which are broken on 2nd of January. These are not very important, but still, to make this session more interactive, these have been included. As T.T. Krishnamachari described the directives as a verifiable dustbin of sentiments, K.C. Varare called them as the manifesto of aims and aspirations and opened them. They serve as mere moral homily, and Sir Ewa Jennings thought that they were only pious aspirations. Next, they are illogically arranged. See friends, we can see that majority of the DPSP is very much illogically arranged. Critics opine that the directives are not arranged in a logical manner based on consistent philosophy. According to N. Srinivasan, The directives are neither properly classified nor logically arranged. The declaration mixes up relatively unimportant issues with most vital economic and social questions. It combines rather incongruously the modern with the aid and provisions suggested by the reason and the science with provisions based purely on sentiment and prejudice. Sir Yvonne Jennings too pointed out that these principles have no consistent philosophy. Next, conservative. According to Sir Yvonne Jennings, the directives are based on political philosophy of the 19th century English. He remarked that the ghosts of Sidney Webb and Beatrix Webb stalk through the pages of the text. Part 4 of the Constitution expresses Fabian socialism without socialism. He opened that the directives are deemed to be suitable India in the middle of the 20th century. The question is whether they are suitable in the 21st century cannot be answered, but it is quite probable that they will be entirely outmoded.